If you've been at Heights, you know that God has blessed us with a vision to step into Prescott Valley and see a church location established there. And for some of you, you're like, I was here way on the front end of that. And some of you, you're like, wait, we're getting a Prescott Valley location. What's happening to this one? We will have two. But along with that, in preparation for, because we're anticipating a January launch of the Prescott Valley campus, we are anticipating a preparation time for us as a family so that we're ready that as we step in, the reason we're stepping in is there are people in our own backyards that need to meet Jesus. They need to encounter Jesus. Along with that, we know that not only do they need to encounter Jesus, but they need to be loved where they're at. Some of them don't even know they need Jesus today. That's my favorite part. And yet we will be family members in no time, right? Because that's what Jesus does. And he's allowed us to step in. One of the ways to prep for that is Saturday night. So if you've heard about Saturday night service, it starts September the 11th, 5:30. Saturday night will be just like the other services. There'll be slight tweaks based on teams, that kind of stuff. But the idea behind Saturday night is this. One, it provides another option for worship. And so if you're like, man, I've always been a Saturday night person, right? I love church on Saturday night. Well, there you go, right? If some of you are like, man, I've been waiting for a practical step to get ready for the Prescott Valley location, here's your practical step. We're building teams on Saturday night because Saturday night in January we'll move to the Prescott Valley location. And the idea is we're going to build community around that Saturday night service through that location, through the facilities, through the park being there, that kind of thing. So Saturday night will start here. It's going to end in Prescott, or well, hopefully it doesn't end, but it'll move to Prescott Valley and we'll go on there. So here's a question. Anybody know I'm switching to Saturday night? Okay, there's a few of you. All right. Well done. I will see you there probably. But we're excited for what it looks like because God's on the move. And when God's on the move, the beauty of it is we get to be a part of it. We get to be a part of this unfolding story. You guys, we have family members that don't know they're family members yet. And we get to be a part of that. We get to be a part seeing families in community uniting together. And that for me is like, man, how could we not? But here's the reality of Prescott Valley. It couldn't happen without this thing called, this spiritual habit that forms us called generosity. And I don't mean just generous like when it comes to finances. Yes, that's a massive part of establishing a physical location. But the generosity piece is what I do with my time, how I utilize my time, how I step in and serve with my time. And what Prescott Valley is going to do is it's going to open up a whole group of new ways that we can be empowered to step in and serve with our lives. And some of that will be informal church settings. Some of that will be, you may be in the park on a midweek day just because you're going to say hi to people. And there's all these opportunities that are coming. But that stems out of generosity. We have to develop and create and nurture and continue the heart of generosity. We wouldn't even be this far without family, the Heights family going, hey, we're in to see people encounter, engage, and empowered in their faith with Jesus. Like, we're in on this. We believe there's a community we're stepping into. And so just to encourage you, generosity then, yes, it flows over financially. Which is why generosity? Because that's when we look, sound, act a whole lot like Jesus. Why? Because God is generous. How do we know that? Well, he showed up on the planet and gave everything. We in turn just get to turn around and do it. And here's what I love. When scripture talks about generosity, it's in this picture of you are a sower, you're a farmer. And God himself puts the seed into your hand. And what you do with that grain, what your next step is with that grain, it's up to you. But this is the part I love. It goes back to, we don't know the family members that are there. When you plant that grain, we don't know what's going to grow. That's God's business. And then the beauty is he fills your hand again because you were trustworthy and you do it again. And this heart of generosity, we get to see it impact in ways we never thought it could. So with that, then, this whole idea of being generous and stepping in as a church family, that's part of Saturday night. I'm going to unashamedly plug it because I know Owen wouldn't, because he's trying to not sound like that. We have the chance, you have the chance to be in on the ground floor. And that may be with the resource of time, relationships, money. You have an opportunity to step in on the ground floor of generosity with the Prescott Valley location because you showed up. Well done. Good job. You're here. And we get to do that. So along with that then, if you want more information, there's plenty more out there. You can get that. But you guys, thank you. Thank you for being on the journey. Thank you for caring about neighbors and watching them meet Jesus. Today, we are shifting gears. We're going to go into where we were as a series last week. And some of you are like, yeah, I still don't know what we talked about last week. That's okay. That's okay. My hope today is last week, the entire series is this very abstract conversation. And so if you were here last week and you're like, man, I'm still scratching my head, I get it. I get it. The glory of God is not an easy topic. I think in my life, I've heard 4 sermons all total on the glory of God. So when we talk about being worshipers, I get the struggle of, man, what did we really dial in last week? My hope is this, that as we go into this week and next week, it then goes from this abstract that we built last week, and now we begin to put the concrete pieces inside of it to where by the end of it, you go, oh, that's what this was all about. That's how this connects to glory. That's how this connects to weight and worth. And so with that then, starting out this week, stepping back and going, okay, the foundation that we laid last week is this, that if you are human, welcome to the planet, you are a chaser. Meaning you were born to chase something. Why? Because you were born to build something. You were born to build a life. The life that was given to you started as a baby, but you didn't stay that way. Why? Because life is always moving forward. It's always progressing. The story of the Bible, it starts in a garden and ends in a city. It's always been designed to move forward. Your role in that is that you were born as a worshiper, meaning that God put in your hands what you choose to build and make much of. You have control of that. That you as a human, you have these choices every single moment of every single day where you are building into something. And here's the reality of the entire series. I'm burdened for us, not only in this room, not only across screens, which by the way, good morning, online community, but not only in this room and on screens. I'm burdened for us as a society. Because what's happening within our culture is it's becoming far too easy to chase something and have something put in front of you that you build your entire life on, that when you get there, it's hollow. That when you get there, it didn't deliver what you thought it would. That when you get there, and now I've spent all of my resources of this one life, which is very short, by the way, this one life, we spend all these resources and we get there only to go, yeah, this wasn't what I thought it was. And this week we're going to analyze what makes us chase certain things. And I got to thinking about this. I was kind of processing my own world and I had this moment. It's a Tuesday. And on this Tuesday, I'm just like really unsatisfied with life. Kind of bored, but really unsatisfied. And I get home and I literally take out my laptop and I'm like, I'm gonna buy something. No clue what I'm about to buy, no clue but I'm getting that hit of dopamine, right? That's just what's gonna happen. And so I sit there and I catch myself like, you don't need this. Why are you getting this? And as I sat there, I started to go, man, something that started as a feeling led me to chase. So I'm kind of bored. I'm kind of unsatisfied. And that's a feeling. I'm going to go chase something to change the feeling. But how many Amazon boxes you got that show up at your house? And don't act like I'm the only one. That when it showed up, you were underwhelmed by what you got. that the star ratings of the review people, you're like, who are you? Right? Another one for me is like stress plays into this, right? And so stress will drive feelings. And so I had this feeling of being out of control. And I was like, man, the world just seems so out of control, but the way it's out of control, I'm just so hurt by it. Something had been going on with somebody very personal to me, and it just hurt. And I remember telling Pastor Bob, I said, Bob, I'm an idiot. And he goes, well, I know that, but why? Right? And I said, man, I sat in a parking lot, and I won't mention the store, and if I just went in and got a six-pack right now, it'd feel a whole lot better. Where's that? Wait. The feeling back here was, I'm out of control, I'm hurt. The solution is, I'm gonna go buy a six-pack and feel a lot better. But the reality, and that's a true story, by the way, I got alcohol in my background, and that was 3 months ago. So that's not like one I'm pulling from my teens. That's like current, that's reality that we all live in. We have these feelings, and the feelings, if they go unchecked, you will chase something out of those feelings. But if you've ever had an empty six-pack, you know, and bottles, by the way, if you ever had, like when you get to the end of it, the solution's not there, right? It's empty. You chased the shadow. You took a feeling and went, how do I solve this? And I chased the shadow and ended up there, which we started this whole series out with a verse from Romans 1:25. It says, they exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshiped and served the created things rather than the Creator. The reality is every single person on the planet, there's not one of us, and it doesn't matter how long you walked with Jesus, there's not one of us that are void from this conversation. That we will, if not careful and very subtly, we will shift based on something I'm experiencing. We will shift to a solution. The problem is that solution may turn out to be the thing that destructs your life. I mean, think about it. We do the feeling of, I just need someone to see me. I just need someone to validate me. I just need to know that I matter. So what do? We pick up our phone and we sit for 10 minutes trying to get the picture that's right, or we go through our reel and go, man, that was a great vacation. Let's put that one online, right? Or I look good in that picture. And then all of a sudden, this thing called a like button shows up, and you get hits of dopamine that start to make you what? Feel validated and feel, what? Man, people really see me. I really matter. And what we've done is we've taken a feeling of, man, I just feel insecure. And when we begin to chase something, but you know the problem with the like button? Someone always got more than you. Every single time. Or you start to weigh, man, my last picture got 100. My last picture got 1,000,000. Somebody's like, you wish. Maybe, I don't know. I think my last post was a loaf of sourdough bread. I don't think that's getting a whole lot. But the truth of the matter is, we also then begin to weigh like, okay, that one didn't get as many as that. That doesn't validate me the way I feel I need. And I chased a shadow, and it turned out to be hollow. And we do this in all forms, and it's not unique to us. It's not unique to us. In Exodus chapter 32, there's a group of people. And if you were with us a couple of months ago, we talked about this home series where God creates our home as it was intended to be, and then sin enters and we end up running away. And as we run away, God, in his goodness and graciousness, comes to a group of people called the Israelites, and he goes, I'm going to make you into my people. I'm going to make you into a nation. This is early on in the nation's history. But what you need to understand before we read the verses is the context that these verses are in. Because for me, I'm like, man, these are my people. I can relate to this. This is what my journey of faith feels like at times. And so for them, they were in Egypt, and God shows up to rescue them. And he performs miracles. They watch these miracles with their own eyes over and over and over, right? And finally, he gets them out. And then as he's taking them out, he's leading them by day by this pillar of cloud and at night by this pillar of fire, right? So God's physical representation is in this cloud that literally leads them out. They get to a sea, and to cross that sea, God performs a miracle. And the miracle is you'll walk through on dry ground, but that enemy that's chasing you, they're going to drown. And so they stand and they watch the enemy drown. And then a couple of happenings in their story later, and you get to the point where it's, hey, we're hungry. We want some food. And God goes, you know what? I'll send you frosted flakes from heaven, right? Kellogg's Only Wishes. Frosted flakes from heaven, right? And they show up and now they're eating. And it's this very tangible. The flakes show up, we get to eat that day. Flakes show up, we get to eat that day. Like God is on display in front of them. Fast forward another little bit in their story, and there's a rock, and they're thirsty. And so God makes water flow from a rock. They get to watch this. Then they get to this mountain called Sinai. And when they get to Sinai and they're in front of this mountain, God's physical presence comes down from heaven in a cloud. There's thunder, there's lightning, like it's no doubt that it's God, so much so that they're like, Moses, you go talk to him. We go talk to him, we're gonna die. And so now you got Moses who goes up on the mountain. That's the context that this verse happens. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what's happened to him. Okay. Beginning of that where it says, when the people saw that Moses was so long, he was only up there 40 days. 40 days. Oh, it's taking forever. What are the feelings they're expressing? I'm uncomfortable with the amount of time that's passed because I'm out of control. When Moses was here, there was some sense of control of the situation. When Moses was tangibly here, I felt at peace. This feels, there's discomfort to this. There's a lack of peace in this. There's a lack of understanding of what's the plan. And so there's a lack of control that they're experiencing. That line at the end of that verse where it says, we don't know what has happened to him. We don't know. We saw him go up in the cloud and we don't know. Lack of information is causing feelings where it's like, this isn't okay. I'm not okay. And that not okay spreads amongst other people. And before you know it, where it says they gathered around, it's an angry mob around a priest, because Aaron was the priest. It's an angry mob now around Aaron going, hey, make us something. We don't know what's happened to this guy. I don't know what's happened to my voice, but we don't know what happened to this guy. Come, make us gods who will go before us. Isn't it fascinating? In this verse, what hit me was it's Moses they're wanting and not God. You see the subtle shift, right? At some point, they began to chase Moses as security, safety, comfort. And there's a slight tweak. And now they're like, okay. You got to make us a new Moses. You got to make us a God who will go before us. So Aaron, the priest, Aaron answered them, take off the gold earrings that your wives and your sons and your daughters are wearing and bring them to me. So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they had handed him and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. Then they said, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. Huh? Why does it make you do that? Like you read that and you go, wait a minute. Okay, like I don't know what you think about this. This is where my brain goes. Aaron's a priest, right? He doesn't work with gold. Not that we know of anywhere in the story. And he literally like, okay, I'm going to take all your gold and I'm going to make this golden calf. What did it look like? It couldn't have been good. Like, he fashions it with a tool. It reminds me of like Play-Doh with my little girls. And they're like, Dad, make me a dog. And I make a dog and they're like, Dad, that doesn't look like a dog. There's nothing to it. And it's this reality of like, what even came out wasn't the beauty of what was there. It wasn't this stunning. And what are they doing? They're giving their stuff to get what? Comfort, safety, security, guarantees. Those all stemmed from feelings. They were overwhelmed. What were they worried about? Man, we were slaves. What if they roll up on us again? What are we going to do? We don't have a God here to protect us. It's like, this is why I say to my people, I can relate. I can relate. I get the feeling of, man, it's out of control. So that idol cast in the shape of the calf, that word idol is interesting because when we chase, if we're not careful, our feelings, the stress of feelings in the wilderness, which I don't know if you know yet, we're not home. So that makes this the wilderness, right? We're not home yet. But the stress of feelings we experience here and now, if we're not careful, they will drive us away from God. Going back to the entire story of God, when you're a runaway and you are chasing something, you're also leaving something behind. You cannot chase and remain in the same place. And so when we chase an idol, which is what the Bible calls it, when it's any time we don't chase God himself, we are chasing an idol. Anytime I take a feeling and I'm going to have this feeling met in another way other than how God intended, I'm making an idol that I'm chasing that will give me what I'm looking for. And Tim Keller said this about idols. Is there anything more important to you than God? Anything that absorbs your heart and imagination more than God? Anything you seek to give you what only God can give you is an idol. Any time in my experience as a human that I choose, right, that this feeling, and I'm attentive to this feeling, and this feeling leads me to chase something. Anytime I seek something else more than I seek God to give me what I need, according to Scripture, that's an idol. Because sometimes we get stuck with a story like this and we go, oh, the golden calf, that makes sense. That's an idol, right? But I think we have idols all the way through our life. I think there are idols just riddled within our hearts. And the idol, the way to figure out an idol is, okay, what am I feeling? What am I getting validation from? So when I hit Amazon, what am I actually really doing on Amazon? Because sometimes I think the things we chase, whether it be relationships, whether it be stuff, it comes back to, man, sometimes, yeah, it's not as tangible like a relationship. But sometimes it's I had this feeling as a kid, and I don't know if this is your story or not, but it's one that shows up common in our culture, that my dad told me I'd never amount to anything. So guess what I spent the rest of my life doing? Getting a bigger house, bigger car, more vacations. Why? So I could look back and go, Dad, I made it. But the problem is when you make it, it's hollow. It leaves you in a place. Why? Because it's an idol. Anything that satisfies you more than God. Carries on. He says, when Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord. Okay, let's just pause right there. This is the priest, sets up the golden calf, sets up an altar. What does he say? There will be a what? Festival to who? The Lord. So now Aaron is taken what he knows to be true in worship, and he's projected it onto this idol in front and still claiming that it's the same worship, but he substituted the God. Carries on then. And says, so the next day the people rose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterward, they sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. It doesn't mean much to us, and we don't need to go into detail, but burnt offerings and fellowship offerings were the way that God had set up for this group of people to worship him, to bring him glory, to make his fame known. And so now in chapter 20, a little earlier in this story, they're in front of God using burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Well, wait a minute. Fast forward to chapter 32, 12 chapters later, and now it's a golden calf, and their worship, their act of worship is the same. They've substituted the God, and yet the worship is the same. We are prevalent as human beings to take the gift of worship that belongs to God, where we center our entire life on him. We are prone, if we're not careful, by feelings that lead us different ways to chase different things, that if we're not careful, it's not long before we are using the exact same things we would give to God and we're giving them to something else. We're just sacrificing on a different altar. Carries on, it says, you guys are like, man, I'm glad I came to church today. This is great. Hang with me. It's going to get real good. Then the Lord said to Moses, go down because your people, love that. God's like, I'm done. They're yours. Whom you brought up out of Egypt have become corrupt. They have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them and have made themselves an idol cast in the shape of a calf. They have bowed down to it, sacrificed to it, and have said, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Israel. The idea of I commanded them. If you've been around church at all, you might not even have been around church. You've heard of the 10 Commandments, right? Number one on the list of the commandments is this, that God told this group of people, don't have any other God before me. What's fascinating is the other 9, which all of this was designed for a group of people that were slaves that are now free. Here's the best way to be human, right? So what's handed to them is these other 9 after, don't have anybody before me. The other 9 have to do with idols of the heart, how we make feelings and we chase those and they turn into idols, like don't murder, right? Don't get so distracted by hatred, the feeling of hatred, the expression of hatred, that you turn around and murder somebody. Don't covet your neighbor's wife or his stuff. It's not going to go well for you, right? Why is this important? Because what he's saying is, hey, there's an order to your heart. There's an order to your heart. And whenever we take God and move him out of order and we put something else there, what happens is everything else in our life will shift subtly off of it. So what do they start with? We want comfort. We want to know what's going on. Make us a calf. And it turns into a party. And that party is what Moses comes down off the mountain into. And what's fascinating is, we'll skip the verses. You can read them later. But in the verses we're going to skip, it's literally God going, I'm done. I'm going to wipe them out, and I'm going to start again with you, Moses. And Moses is like, hey, let's not do that. Let's think about this first. Let's not just, wipe them out. They deserve it, but let's not do that. And so God relents, and then this happens in verse 19. When Moses approached the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, his anger burned, and he threw the tablets out of his hands, breaking them into pieces at the foot of the mountain. Verse 20. And he took the calf the people had made and burned it in the fire, then ground it into powder, scattered it on the water, and made the Israelites drink it. Y'all, that's in the Bible. That's crazy. Like, how angry do you have to be like, we're going to burn this, and I'm going to grind it into a powder, and then I'm going to let you consume it. And then I got to thinking about it. I was in a meeting this week, and we were sitting there chatting, and Kaylee mentioned that her and Zach had seen a worship kind of teaching, and she said, they talked in this video about how our worship is meant to be consumed by God. But idolatry is when we consume what belongs to God. And all of a sudden I was like, man, that connects the dots back to Romans chapter 1, where we were last week, where it says, therefore, in verse 24, therefore God gave them over. God gave humanity over in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth for a lie. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshiped and served created things rather than the Creator. That phrasing of gave them over, here's what I don't understand this. I'm too much of a control freak. I don't understand how God looked at humanity and went, if you want to chase that, I'll let you chase it. If you want to consume that, I'll let you consume it. You guys, God loves us an awful lot to do that. Because at the end of chasing what should be given to him, he allows us to consume the very thing we think we need, only to discover it's not what we thought it was. That's a loving God. That's a God that allows us to live holistically. And then 32 finishes this way. He said to Aaron, what did these people do to you that you led them into such a great sin? You see, the issue of the human soul is that last word. What sin is this, a real easy way to kind of frame up sin, is that God's got a target of what it looks like to worship him. God's got a target of the best way to be human. God's got a target out in front of us of what we should chase. And sin is when I know the target, but I'm just a little off. And if I'm true in my life, normally when I miss the target, I'm over here. I'm not even close. But God goes, this is what you are made for. This is what you've been created for. Is that you are not just a human being. You are created in the image of Almighty God. And you were designed in such a way that when people see you, they get to see the very image of God. Which means that your life is anything but mundane. But if you're anything like me, when feelings rage and I begin to chase something and I go, man, I'm off track. I've missed the mark. I've let sin creep in. I started to go, how do we correct that, right? How do we bring that back? You see, what I find fascinating with the nation of Israel in this moment, there's a mountain and there's smoke. You can't deny God's presence. You can't deny that God's moved. You can't deny that God's not with them. There's none of that. But when their eyes aren't on the mountain and their eyes are here and their feelings are raging, they end up creating something that years later we sit here and we're like, this just doesn't even make sense until we slow down and go, oh, I miss the mark all the time. One last verse. Hebrews chapter 12. Because there's a solution to our problem. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Isn't that a great line? The sin, because I don't know about you, I don't set out to go, man, I'm just going to miss the mark because that's great. I set out most times with noble intentions. I set out most times with like, okay, I want to honor God, and I begin my day and I'm like, man, God, you know what? I'm feeling good today. We spent our time today, and I get to work, and then that person says that, and all of a sudden I'm like, And then that person says that, or that happens, and by lunch, I'm sitting at lunch going, okay, where can I go and spend the least amount of money and get the most amount of food because I want to feel comfortable, right? It's just subtle. And in this moment where it's talking about so easily entangles, the miss the mark that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance. Don't give up. Stay the course. The race marked out for us. Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. What is the answer to a life of worship? What is the answer to not chasing shadows? What is the answer to not getting to the end of your life and going, man, I thought this would promise more? The answer is found on where I fix my eyes. The answer is found on this Jesus who is not only, another translation says he's the author of your faith. And it's the moments when my eyes get shifted from Jesus, when my eyes get moved to myself, that I miss the very thing that Jesus has been doing all along, and that's writing my story. And all of a sudden I end up chasing something only to realize, man, I got to come back to center, back to here. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Listen, family, consider him who endured such opposition from sinners so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. You know what lose heart means? You get discouraged. Well, guess what? Discouraged is a feeling. How do we beat the feeling? We go back to what we know to be true. We go back to the fact, we go back to fix here. Why? Because the heart is the center of us. To not become discouraged with this journey, to not fall into idolatry of any form where we substitute these things for what God can only give us. It's about our heart. It's about our heart, the center of us, fixated on the person of Jesus who has made a way. Y'all, I need to say this. There is grace. You know that, right? So if you're sitting here and you're like, man, I've been all over the place, there's good news. There's grace. You're not guilty. You're forgiven. You're not condemned. You're whole. But what it takes is today, these next moments, it's just me stepping back and going, I'm going to fixate there because I've been all over the place. I'm going to come back and set my heart there. We sang a song last week called Take My Heart. And the whole point of Take My Heart was nothing more than this. God, you can take it because it's the center of me. You can have all of me. And today, maybe as a prayer, as we begin this, just a prayer over us is just, God, you can have my heart.